The courtroom was silent enough to hear the ceiling fan groan. A dozen reporters waited with pens ready, their eyes darting between the defense table and the bench. On the stand sat a woman in her mid-30s, her uniform crisp, her medals gleaming faintly under the dull lights. She sat straight, her posture a blend of discipline and quiet defiance. Her nameplate read Major Elena Cross, but no one called her that. The judge adjusted his glasses and glanced down at the papers before him. "Major Cross," he said, his voice sharp and self-assured. "For the record, please state your call sign." Elena didn't move. She kept her eyes fixed on the flag at the far end of the courtroom, her jaw set. The military prosecutor shifted uncomfortably beside her, sensing the tension coiling in the air. The judge frowned. "Major, this is a lawful proceeding. You are under oath." "I will ask again to state your call sign," her attorney whispered. "You don't have to." "Yes, she does," the judge interrupted, his gavel cracking against the wood. "This court has every right to know who we're dealing with." For a moment, the only sound was the soft hum of the fluorescent lights above. Elena finally turned her gaze to the judge. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm but cold enough to cut through the silence. "They called me Phantom Zero." A few reporters froze mid-note. Someone in the back audibly gasped. The prosecutor blinked, confused, but the judge just smirked, unimpressed. "Phantom Zero," he repeated with mock amusement. "A bit dramatic, don't you think, Major?" Elena didn't answer. Her eyes held his, steady and unflinching. But several men in the courtroom suddenly grew pale. One of them, a retired general sitting behind the defense table, leaned toward another officer and whispered, "She's that Phantom Zero?" The whisper spread like wildfire. Everyone in the room knew the legend, an unconfirmed Black Ops operative responsible for a classified operation that had gone wrong in Eastern Europe. The mission was erased from official records, but the story survived in the whispers of those who'd been close enough to feel its heat. Phantom Zero had been the ghost who infiltrated an enemy compound, extracted hostages, and neutralized a high-value target with surgical precision. But she'd also exposed a leak in her own command, one that reached all the way to the Pentagon. The leak had led to the deaths of her entire recon unit. And the man who signed off on the cover-up, the same man now wearing a judge's robe. Elena watched as the realization began to flicker behind his smug expression. His fingers twitched against his gavel. "This court," he began, trying to regain composure, "is not a forum for war stories or rumors. You are here on charges of insubordination and destruction of classified property." She tilted her head slightly. "Classified property? You mean the drive I found in your office?" A murmur swept through the courtroom. The judge's face hardened. "You will nota." "I will," she said quietly, her voice steady, her eyes never leaving his, "because the data on that drive contained orders signed by you, orders that authorized a covert strike on unarmed civilians. My team refused to carry it out. You called it treason. We called it humanity." The judge slammed his gavel again, but the sound cracked with desperation. "You're lying." Elena reached into her folder and held up a thin black USB drive sealed in evidence tape. "This was recovered from your safe 2 weeks ago, under a federal warrant." A collective gasp rose from the gallery. The prosecutor looked stunned. "Major, how did you get authorization for that search?" "Through the Inspector General's office," she replied. "They reopened the case last month. I wasn't supposed to testify until next week, but someone," she glanced at the judge, "pushed this hearing ahead of schedule." The judge's face drained of color. "This is outrageous. I will not allow." He stopped mid-sentence when two uniformed military police officers entered the courtroom. Their presence was quiet but commanding. One of them stepped forward, producing a document. "By order of the Department of Defense," the officer said firmly, "Judge Raymond Holt, you are hereby placed under investigation for obstruction of justice, perjury, and conspiracy to conceal war crimes." The courtroom erupted into chaos. Reporters leaped to their feet, cameras flashed, voices overlapped. The judge stood frozen, his mouth open but no sound emerging. His gavel slipped from his hand and clattered to the floor. Elena remained seated, unmoving. "Major Cross," the officer said respectfully, "your testimony is no longer required. Thank you for your cooperation, Phantom Zero." She gave a single nod. Her expression didn't change, but a flicker of something, a sorrow, maybe, crossed her eyes. As the judge was escorted out, he turned to her. His voice was a hoarse whisper. "You think this makes you a hero?" She met his gaze one last time. "No," she said softly, "it just makes the truth harder to bury." He was led away in handcuffs, his once proud stride broken. When the courtroom finally emptied, Elena stayed behind for a moment, staring at the empty bench. The man who'd tried to destroy her career was gone. The ghosts of her team, Echo, Hunter, Vex, and Shady, still lingered in her memory. She could almost hear them laughing, teasing her about her old call sign, the one she had never wanted. She walked outside into the pale afternoon light. The press swarmed toward her, shouting questions, but she ignored them. She'd said what needed to be said. A single black car was waiting by the curb. An older man stepped out, a general with silver hair and deep, tired eyes. "You did it," he said quietly. "I didn't do it for revenge," she replied. "I did it for them." He nodded. "They'd be proud." She looked past him toward the horizon. The sky was streaked with gray, heavy with the promise of rain. "Maybe," she said, "but some ghosts don't rest that easily." As she turned to leave, a reporter shouted, "Major, what's next for Phantom Zero?" Elena paused. A faint smile touched her lips. "Disappearing again," she said. "That's what phantoms do." She climbed into the car, and it pulled away, leaving the courthouse and the ruin of one man's career in its wake. Behind her, the headlines began to spread. "Judge exposed in military scandal, a testimony by a Phantom Zero uncovers hidden crimes." But Elena didn't look back. She'd already spent too many years chasing ghosts. This time, she was ready to let the world remember the truth on its own.